All right, so we want to look at the difference between simple interest and compounded interest. So, simple interest is the interest that is calculated only on the principal. So remember, interest can be looked at in two ways. All right, it's the profit you make when you borrow somebody money, and it's also the cost of borrowing when you borrow money. So when we talk about the principal, this is just the original amount that is given. So if someone comes to borrow 1,000 kwacha from you, that is the principal. So simple interest is the interest calculated only on the principal. Whilst compounded interest is the interest calculated on the principal and the interest, or the accumulated interest. So as I'm going to illustrate, we're going to see that with compound interest, we're not only calculating the interest solely on the principal, we're also including the interest that is earned over time. We're calculating interest on that interest. Okay. So here is an illustration. Let's say, for example, you have a 1,000 kwacha, and your bank says if you deposit this 1,000 kwacha, the interest you'll be earning is 10%. So our principal here, we have a 1,000 kwacha. The interest rate is 10%. All right, and let's say the duration is for 3 years. Okay, and using the same example, we also put it with on the for compound interest. You have a 1,000 kwacha. The bank is offering 10% interest, and the interest is compounded semi-annually. Okay, so we say interest compounded semi-annually, meaning you'll be paid interest twice a year. Okay. Yes, so we're going to see the difference. I'm going to illustrate the difference between simple interest and compounded interest. So first things first, with simple interest, let's find out how much are we going to have after 3 years. And also when the interest is compounded, how much are we going to have after 3 years? So let's start with simple interest. So if you want to find out how much you're going to have after some time, this is the formula. A equals P, the principal, 1 plus the interest rate multiplied by the time. All right. So in this case, our principal is 1,000 kwacha. Our interest rate is 10%. If you convert 10% into a decimal, it becomes 0.1. And the time is 3 years. So 0.1 times 3, that is 0.3. 0.3 times 0.3 plus 1 is that's 1.3. So with 1,000, I mean, we have 1.3 multiplied by 1,000. And we're going to get 1,300 kwacha. So in total, if you put your money in the bank, that 1,000 kwacha, and the interest is 10%, after 3 years in your bank, it will be showing you a balance of 1,300. All right. Remember, the principal is 1,000. If you want to find out how much total interest have we accumulated, you just say 1,300 minus the principal, the total amount minus the principal. So in total, we have earned 300 kwacha interest over 3 years. Now, let's take it to compounded interest. How much money are we going to have after 3 years if we put a 1,000 in the bank and the interest is compounded semi-annually? So this is the formula we'll use to find out how much we'll have in total after 3 years. Principal multiplied by 1 plus r over n, the power n times t. So with compounded interest, what happens is the interest rate is divided by the number of compoundings so that it's spread out throughout the year, right? So you are always going to divide the interest rate by the number of compoundings, and you're also going to multiply the time period by the number of compoundings, all right? So our principal is 1,000. The interest rate was 10%. So say 10% divided by, so we said our interest is compounded semi-annually. So if it's compounded semi-annually, then n, the number of compoundings, is twice. So 10% divided by 2, the power 2 multiplied by 3, since it's still 3 years. 1,000 here. 10% divided by 2, that's 5%. So we have 1 plus 0.05. This is the 5%. To the power 6. So 1,000 multiplied by 1.05 to the power 6. Let me just do my calculations. So 1.05 to the power 6, that is 1.34. We're going to say 1,000 times 1.34. We have 1,340 kwacha. So after 3 years, when we deposit in our bank and the interest is compounded semi-annually, we are going to have 1,340 kwacha. So as you can see, with the compounded interest, you're going to have more in your account than with simple interest. Now I want to illustrate the difference so that we can see what we mean when we say simple interest is just the interest calculated on the principal, and compound interest is the interest calculated on the principal and the interest accumulating. Okay, so this basically what I just wanted to illustrate is how much you're going to have after the 3 years. So we can see with compounded interest, you have 40 kwacha more than with simple interest. So now let me illustrate here. So we're going to start with simple interest, all right? We start with period 0. This is when you put in the 1,000 in the bank. All right, so the principal is 1,000. Once you put the money in the bank, you don't earn interest there, and then interest is usually paid at the end of the year. Okay, so at the end of year 1, let me just put the 0.1 here to represent the 10%. At the end of year one, okay, we want to calculate how much interest we got. So we're just going to say the interest rate 10% multiplied by the principal 1000, make 100 kwacha in interest. So at the end of the year one in our bank, we have a total of 1000 plus 100, 1100. After year two passes, again, calculate the interest. So with simple interest, the interest will just remain the same over the years, right? Each year, you're just saving 100 kwachas interest, right? At the end of year two, you have a total of 1200 in your bank. Year three comes, again, interest of 100 kwacha. At the end of year three, you have a total balance of 1300 kwacha, which is this amount we calculated here, this 1300. This is how much you must have at the end of the year, at the end of the 3 years. So with simple interest, very easy, very basic. Now let's compare it with compound interest, right? Remember, with compound interest, we said the interest is compounded semi-annually. That means it's compounded 2 times, right? So they said since the interest rate was 10%, we divided that 10% by the number of compoundings, which is 2. So the interest rate we'll be using is 5%. Okay, because as I said, with compounding, the interest rate is divided by the number of compoundings. So in year zero, you put in the 1000 kwacha, you do not earn any interest, to amount 1000. Now remember, you'll be getting paid twice a year. Okay, so you can be paid 10% after 6 months and another 10% after another 6 months. That's why the interest rate has been divided to 5%. After 6 months, they pay you 5% of your interest. After another 6 months, they pay you 5% of your interest. So since it's compounded 2 times in a year, that 12 months, so you'll be receiving your interest every after 6 months. So after the first 6 months, all right, we calculate our interest. So we use 5%, so 5% of 1000. Okay, we earn interest of 50 kwacha. So after 6 months in our bank account, we have 1050 kwacha. After another 6 months passes, this is now basically 1 year. Another 6 months passes. So now notice, we are not going to calculate the interest of this 1000, but of the accumulated amount that we've got here, this 1050. So we use this 1050 here, we calculate 5% of it. So after 1 year, the interest that we get 52.5. So how much we have in total in our bank account? We have 1103 kwacha. All right. Then another 6 months passes. All right. Basically, we're entering into year two. Another 6 months passes. So as I said, compound interest is the interest calculated on the principal and the accumulated interest. That's why you see the amounts here are increasing for the principal here, because the interest is accumulating. So we're going to say get 5% of 1103. We get we get an interest of 55 kwacha, 15 ngwem. So in total, after 1 year, 6 months, In our account, we have 1,158. All right. Then we now reach the end of year 2. Calculate our interest. So we get 5%. With 7.9. So at the end of 2 years in our bank account, we have 57.9. Oh, we have 1,158 plus 57.9 of 1,216 kwacha. Another 6 months pass, 1,216 kwacha. We get our interest 5%. With this amount, we get 60.8. So after 2 years, 6 months in our bank account, we have 1,276 kwacha. Another 6 months pass. We're in year 3. Calculate the interest. So we have here 1,276 kwacha. Okay, we calculate the interest. 5% of this amount gets 63.8 kwacha. Add this. So after 3 years, we have 1,340 kwacha in our bank account. As you can see, this 1,340 was calculated here. This is how much we're going to have in our bank account after 3 years. So what I need you to notice here is, as you can see, with simple interest, the interest is the same every year because it's just calculated on the principal. So the amount will be the same. But with compound interest, the interest is calculated on the principal and the accumulating interest. As you can see here, the numbers will change, which we had to calculate the interest from. All right. And as you can see, with compound interest, you expect to have more than with simple interest. It's just that the number of years are small, that's 3 years. But if we go further on, after 10 years, the number will be even great. The difference will be big. Yes, so this is basically the illustration of the difference between simple interest and compound interest.